Hello everybody, it's Kara from Wild Book Garden, and today I'm here with two spoiler-free reviews, one for A Heart Worth Stealing by Joanna Barker, and one for Beauty Reborn by Elizabeth Lowham. I received both of these books in exchange for an honest review. These are both coming out very shortly at the time that I'm posting this, so if you're interested in either of these, you'll be able to pick them up very soon. And as I said, both of these reviews are going to be spoiler-free. These books are not like connected in any way, except that they are arcs I received from the same publisher, so I thought just to put the reviews together, and I will also list any content warnings for these books in the description as well, so please check that out if you would like to. So I'm going to start with the book that I read first, which is A Heart Worth Stealing by Joanna Barker. This is a proper romance plus a mystery. We're following our main character, Genevieve Wilde. She also goes by Ginny sometimes, and her father has died recently. He was the magistrate of their area or of their county, and she really misses him. She's really grieving him, and at one point her father's watch that was like one of her most meaningful keepsakes from him, one of the only things she really has to remember him by, that watch goes missing. Genevieve thinks that it was stolen. Other people in the area aren't really believing her, especially like the other kind of magistrates. They're like, treating her like this silly woman who doesn't know anything. And she's very frustrated, understandably, and so she decides to actually hire kind of like an investigator, but he's known as like a thief taker, which are kind of like bounty hunters, sort of, but also a little bit like private investigators, and they're really not treated well by like high society or even like the middle class. But she ends up hiring one named Jack. He's a former Bow Street runner, and she wants him to find her watch, and they end up getting kind of more than they bargained for. It seems like there might be some more things going on besides just her father's watch going missing. And the two of them end up spending a lot more time together because of this investigation, and because of the cover story they end up having to cook up for why Jack is spending so much time around her. They end up lying and saying that he's her cousin so that he can like stay in her house and like protect her without anyone like gossiping or anything, because there have been some like attacks and weird accidents on Genevieve's home, and so there's like some danger as well. So as I have said with other books, I tend to really enjoy when there's like a mystery subplot and like our two main characters are like working together on that and spending a lot of time together, and that's one of the pieces of the romance. That tends to be a combination I enjoy, and I also tend to like a working man kind of story for historical romance, because I'm not really into the whole like Duke Count peerage thing in general. So this had a lot kind of going for me in terms of the premise. I did also really enjoy Ginny as a main character. I really felt for her, and I just found her very likable. I enjoyed seeing her kind of like, I don't know, like struggle to kind of prove herself to people, but then also kind of grow in her own confidence. I really loved her friend, like her best friend. She's one of those characters who I think could have come off as a very like stereotypical like free-spirited friend for like a historical book, like the main character is often more quiet and reserved, and then their friend is like more fun-loving and out there and chaotic and everything, but she felt very genuine, and I really loved the friendship that we see between her and Genevieve. I also think that the relationship between her and her father is communicated really beautifully. We obviously don't see him on page because he has already died, but the way this book handles that grief I think is very thoughtful, and that is something that Ginny deals with throughout the book. It's not like she stops thinking about it when she has other things going on, and that felt very true to life. I also really enjoyed the writing style itself. I think it was a really good balance of like the historical elements while also not being overly technical or off-putting. I also really loved the glimpses we got of Jack's family, like his mother and sisters and grandmother. I loved them as characters. I loved seeing them interact with Genevieve. That was one of my favorite parts of the book, really. But overall, I feel like this book was kind of in the middle for me, and a big part of that is Jack. He was fine. Like, I did not dislike him as a character or as a love interest, but I just wanted more from him. I wanted to enjoy the romance a lot more than I did. As I said, I did really like Genevieve and feel for her, so in comparison, Jack just fell a little flat for me. And I also I don't know, it's hard to explain because some of their interactions, I think their chemistry was written really well, but in terms of their actual like conversations and I don't know, the way they like interact with each other, I had kind of mixed feelings about it. I would have liked there to be more scenes and more moments where Genevieve was the one who had kind of the advantage, or like, more information or more confidence. That does happen a little bit more near the end of the book, but I just would have liked that to be more balanced throughout. I've talked about that before. That's just something I prefer in romances. I like when both parties kind of like are allowed to show their strengths to each other. Like, it's not that he didn't respect her, but I just wish we had gotten more scenes of Genevieve being in charge, or you know, like making decisions and things like that. Like, there was some of that. I don't want it to sound like Jack was like, you know, a show off or like aggressive or like controlling or anything, because he absolutely wasn't. But he just was a little too smug and cocky sometimes, and I wish that Genevieve had been allowed to kind of combat that more. So because Jack was kind of lackluster, the romance piece of this was kind of lackluster for me, which is obviously like a big chunk of the book. I just wasn't super invested in it, and I didn't really buy their relationship and kind of the development of it, considering how little time they had spent together. Because a lot of times, like, when you have a situation like this, I can definitely be sold on a romance. Like, even if, like, looking at the days that have passed, it's like, well, they haven't known each other that long. But if you can create situations and characters who like I love and who I'm engaged with, I won't even think about how little they've known each other. But this one I was thinking about that. And then the other big thing is the mystery itself. I also had kind of mixed feelings on. There were parts that I liked or that I thought were interesting. There were parts that were satisfying, but then there were also some things where I was really hoping we wouldn't go in a certain direction because it felt a little tired. But then that is, I don't know, that's kind of what happened. So I didn't love the way some of the mystery elements played out, especially at the end. I don't know. Again, just like mixed feelings on that. And because the mystery and the romance were like arguably the main pieces of this story, and because those are the ones that fell a little short for me, I gave A Heart Worth Stealing 3.5 stars. So I did like it. It just wasn't a love, and I didn't enjoy it as much as I was hoping to. I really thought I would love the romance, and it was just kind of okay. But I do want to mention another thing I really liked about the interactions between the characters. I appreciated how Genevieve's involvement in the mystery felt reasonable. Like, we got to see her make some of her own decisions and like be important and be smart and everything. But there are a couple moments where like Jack tells her like to stay there while he runs after this person who just like attacked them, and she like wants to go after him, and she's annoyed at being told to like stay out of the way like she's a kid, and she starts to go after him, and then she's like, okay, but wait, like, I am not a fighter. I would not be good at this. I'm just gonna put us both in danger if I do that. So even though she's not happy about it, she does kind of learn to recognize when like her abilities are not going to serve the investigation, and she would just be putting them in danger. Because that's like something I find kind of frustrating, is it's like sometimes I think authors are so fixated on giving us like a strong female character TM that they have them do things that are just kind of like stupid or irresponsible, and we're not supposed to feel like they are, you know? So anyway, I did enjoy that. I did like the book, but this was kind of a mixed bag for me. And then the second one I read is Beauty Reborn by Elizabeth Lowham. This is a Beauty and the Beast retelling that is dealing specifically with sexual assault and with PTSD, so big content warnings for that. And this is relatively short. It's only about 200 pages, but I really, really thought this was fantastic. Yeah, I feel like the average rating for this is like not super great right now, but I loved it. I thought this was really well done. The general story is that this is a Beauty and the Beast retelling. Our main character is named Beauty, and we start the book with her going off into the forest to take her father's place. And we start the book knowing that the reason she did this is because of her assault. We don't know a lot of details about it, but we know that she basically is willing to die, possibly even wanting to. So another big content warning for suicidal ideation. But yeah, so that's how like the story starts. And then as that progresses, as she gets to the castle and eventually meets the Beast and starts interacting more with him, starts exploring the castle and realizing that this can be an actual safe space for her, we get flashbacks to what happened before and how she met this man who ends up assaulting her. And yeah, I thought this was incredibly effective. I think as a retelling, this is so smart. I know a lot of people are tired of Beauty and the Beast retellings. I personally am not. It's a story that I still enjoy seeing versions of, but I think this one specifically is a really interesting and unusual take, and I think it makes so much sense. Like the way that Elizabeth Lowham uses some of the original beats of the story and then turns them on their head so that she can use it to talk about patriarchy and toxic masculinity and rape culture and assault, I think is just so smart and so thoughtful. And I feel like the handling of that assault and of that trauma, like Beauty has PTSD, and that doesn't just go away. It doesn't even just go away when she starts realizing that she does have people around her who care about her, and that felt very respectful of what she has gone through, and that felt very real. So I really like that we see that healing is not linear. And I also really like that we see Beauty realize she does have support around her. Like there are people who care about her and who believe her. Not everybody, unfortunately, but she does have people that she can rely on even when she doesn't think she does. And so I really liked that as well. As far as Beauty herself as a character, I really, really felt for her. Like this is from her point of view, and there are some lines that are just absolutely gut-wrenching, and I really feel like, I mean, I got very invested in Beauty and in seeing her, you know, start to heal and start to find some kind of happiness even after these horrible things. I also really, really loved the characterization of the Beast. He's a really, really wonderful character. I loved his interactions with Beauty, and I loved seeing their growing trust in each other and their developing relationship. And I really love how, like, I'm just really impressed at how in such a short book we still got to know him really well, and I still loved him, while also not taking the focus off of Beauty and this being her story, you know, like she still felt very like centered in this story, and I really appreciated that. We also, in this version, we have Beauty's two older sisters, but she also has a brother in this version, and I ended up really liking him. I was pleasantly surprised by Rob as a character, and he's not in it a ton, but I like what we got from him. And just in general, I feel like the small cast, like the small group of characters in this book, actually really worked for me. You know, don't go into this one hoping for the kind of like whimsical supporting cast of like the enchanted objects, you know, that happens in a lot of Beauty and the Beast retellings, because we don't get that. But I think it's a testament to how well written the characters and the themes are in this book that I didn't even really miss them. Like we'll get to a point where I did have a little bit of an issue with some of the character choices, but in general, I feel like all of these characters, like Beauty especially, and like the way the retelling was handled, all of that could carry the story by itself. And I think, again, in a very short book, that's impressive to me, especially. So in terms of things that I didn't always like, I do really wish that we had had more decent female characters besides Beauty herself. We do get some interactions with one of her sisters that are more positive, but in general, there are not a lot of women in this book, and the ones that are not great. It's a little bit, it feels a little bit like girl on girl hate in the way that they're written, and especially because Beauty herself has a little bit of the not like other girls thing throughout the book, and I do think that is understandable because of what she has gone through, and I do think that the author is unfortunately saying some things about how sometimes women do not support other women even when they are victims of assault. So I think that that is intentional in some places, but I do still think that there are parts that it could have been, I think, done more effectively and in a way where we got to have more women in the story that were actually likable and like more developed characters. And as you guys know, the not like other girls thing is one of my least favorite things. So I do wish that Beauty hadn't felt quite so much like that in some places, but I do think that got better as the book went on. And then the other kind of mixed feelings I had were some parts of the writing. Overall, I did really like the writing. And as I said, there were some moments and scenes, like basically all of the scenes related to her and Beast's interactions and the discussion of these themes of trauma and healing, which is a big chunk of the book. So all of that stuff was, I really, really loved the writing there. And I also really loved all of the writing choices around the retelling. I thought that was so clever and so smart and very thoughtful, as like with how the author connected that to the themes. So there's a lot of the writing that I did love, but there were some places that the style felt maybe a little bit forced, or there was like some overuse of certain words. Like I got a little tired of reading the word whimsy because that is used so many times to describe Beauty, like by herself and by like other characters and everything. So that was just a little annoying personally. Although I do think even with that, there are places where it's very intentional, because Beauty being whimsical and imaginative is used as one reason not to believe her about what happened to her. So even with the things that I didn't care for as much, I think there were places where it was intentional. So yeah, this is one of those books, I think I've said this before, where there are some books that I give 5 stars where it's like, I really don't have any criticisms of it. And then there's some books I give 5 stars where I do have criticisms. I do think there are things that could have been done better, but they're just so outweighed by other things that I still give it the full 5 stars. And that's where I'm at with Beauty Reborn. I did give this one 5 stars. I can see how it would not be for everyone. It is a very theme forward book, but that I think was really well done. And I think that even though there are some characters or character choices that I think could have been a little more developed, in general, like the main characters and the important characters are just so well fleshed out, and I love like the supportiveness of a lot of these relationships. So I just ended up really loving this. I think it is such a smart take on Beauty and the Beast. I think it is such a thoughtful handling of these really important issues. So if this sounds like something you'd be into, maybe you're looking for like a book that deals with these issues that's not necessarily a contemporary, or maybe you are looking for a different kind of retelling, anything like that. I just thought this was a really fantastically done book. And as I said, I gave Beauty Reborn 5 stars. Okay, everybody, so that was my double review for Heart Worth Stealing and Beauty Reborn. Please comment down below, let me know if you're interested in either of these and picking them up. Obviously, like, these books don't have any connection to each other, but if I had to pick a favorite, it would clearly be Beauty Reborn. I was really blown away by this one. Like, of course I expected to enjoy it, but it was even better than I hoped. So thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you soon with another video, and I hope you love the next book you read. Bye!